Buying a house is a big deal, and I feel like this is well-known knowledge, but the home buying process can be overwhelming. And the everyday American who's caught up in their day-to-day busy lives, they don't have the time to go educate themselves on the home buying process and making sure that they know all the ins and outs so they don't make the mistakes. And with such a big purchase, these mistakes can come easily, and with a big purchase, they can become costly mistakes. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over the 8 mistakes that you have to avoid as a home buyer. And this video applies whether you're a first-time home buyer or you maybe went through the process a few times, but it's been a few years since you've done it. And as you can tell, just about everything in this world, a lot has changed in the last few years. So with that being said, let's dive into those 8 right now. Mistake number 1 is jumping to the fun part. A lot of people will start looking at homes before learning what they can actually afford and realistically should be looking at. This could lead to disappointment in 2 different forms. Either you find a house that you really love and you fall in love with it, but you can't even get an opportunity to get a showing before it gets snatched up off the market, or you start looking at homes that end up, once you get a pre-approval, way out of your price range, and now you're disappointed at the homes that you can afford because they don't really live up to what you've been looking at for the past 4 months on Zillow. Mistake number 2 is speaking only to one lender. And now the reason why this is a mistake is because you kind of want to shop around to see what other lenders can offer you, because they do have different loan products. Some are a little bit cheaper than others, so you could save some money on actually the cost of the loan. And I always kind of suggest to speak with about 3 lenders. I always suggest small local lenders and small local banks. Now, local lenders are good because, of course, they know the market and they're a little bit more lenient on certain things, but they're going to sell their loans to a secondary market like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Where with small local banks, a lot of them will keep their loans in-house. So they have really kind of control on how they lend because it's literally not getting sold to a secondary market. So their requirements are what they set. So it could kind of have a really good loan for you. So that's why I always suggest about 3 lenders you should at least speak with and try to entertain. Mistake number 3 is thinking that you need 20% down to get into a house. And I got into real estate at a young age of 20 years old, so I don't really understand why this is still such a hard thing to understand for people, but it's still an assumption a lot of people make, is thinking they need 20% down. You don't. It's just straight up dead wrong. You can get into homes worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for a few $1,000s if done correctly. So, of course, there's like FHA loan, 3.5% down. There's conventional owner occupies, 3% down. VA loans, 0% down. USDA loans, 0% down. There are a ton of options. So thinking you need 20% down could be a massive barrier for you to get over. And a quick little side note, if you're liking this video so far, make sure to hit that like button. And on to mistake number 4. This is draining your savings account to buy a house. I cannot say this enough to people. Do not drain your savings account just to get into the house. It's a huge mistake. This is going to be probably the biggest purchase you ever make in your life, unless you go and buy another house. But with that being said, you want to actually be able to afford it. You don't want to get into that house, deplete all your savings, and then guess what? There goes your furnace. Where are you going to come up with $5,000 to $8,000? You're probably going to have to put it on a credit card, and then you go into credit card debt, not where you want to be as a homeowner. So, work on your savings and keep building that up, because I promise you, once you do have enough money, there will be homes on the market for you to go and buy. Mistake number 5 is making decisions based off of emotions. I feel like a broken record, but home buying, the process of it, a lot of it is just going to be your prep and actually planning for it. So I always tell people to make a list of must-haves and a list of absolute deal breakers. If you see it in a house, nope, that's not the one. This at least gives some clarity for when you're going to see these houses in person. You can determine if it's something you actually want to put an offer in or not. And I feel like so many people skip this, which I don't understand why. Because again, this is a massive purchase that you're making. If you're going to buy a new car, I'm going to guess that you have some parameters, some ideas. You probably did a little bit of research, whether you want leather interior, you want to make sure you get a car that's all-wheel drive, or maybe you have a certain brand in mind. You have something that you're planning for. So do that with a house. Make some lists, so that you can have clarity and know what you're looking for. Mistake number 6 is actually kind of bouncing off number 5, and that's what I call the unicorn. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but the perfect house does not exist. I repeat this again, it does not exist. You could literally go buy a piece of raw land, design a custom built house, and then probably within a month or 2 of living in that brand new custom built house, you probably wish there was stuff that you did differently and designed differently. There just isn't a perfect house. So with the list that you would have made from number 5, your must-haves. I always tell people to go about 75 to 80%. If that house matches 75, 80% of your must-haves, consider at least putting an offer in. And the reason I say this is because you're not going to find that one that has everything you want. And I've had this happen with some of the clients I've worked with where they pass up on making an offer because the house wasn't perfect. But then they go another 3 months without finding that perfect house, and they look back regretting that they never even made an offer on the one that it would have worked. They really like it now looking back on it. But again, they were in their head that they wanted perfect. Perfect doesn't exist for houses. So you made it through the first 6 mistakes, and here are the 2 biggest mistakes that you could make when going to purchase a house, and you need to make sure you avoid these. And mistake number 7 is not being aware of all the additional costs. So everything that's involved with the home buying process. And that could include a ton of things, but some things are like the actual cost of the move. Maybe you have to pay your landlord to get out of a yearly lease that you're in so you can actually go move into the house. But the biggest one I want to reap on is closing costs. People associate closing costs with the down payment, and these are 2 different things. The down payment is a whole separate cost, and the closing cost is what it actually costs you to close on the property. So things like New Hampshire transfer tax, your lender fees, your title company fees, a bunch of different fees that actually go into purchasing the property. And these can be anywhere from 2% to 5% of the purchase price. And again, this is on top of the down payment. So make sure you're planning for that. And usually your lender is the best contact when you're actually going through the process to kind of give you a suggestion and a little bit of an idea of what those closing costs will be for each specific scenario. And mistake number 8, I saved the best for last. And this one, I am not being biased, but I think it's one of the most important parts in the real estate home buying process, and that is finding the right agent for you. Notice I said the right agent for you. I'm not trying to beg you and tell you you should work with me. If you don't like the way I go about my things, don't work with me. The reason I say that is because, again, like I mentioned in the introduction of this video, it's an overwhelming process for the home buying. It can get stressful. It can take months. And with your real estate agent, you're going to be contacting them a lot. You're going to be talking with them a lot. They're the main point of contact throughout this whole process. So you want to find someone that fits you and fits the needs that you have in an agent. If you're looking for something particular, well, make sure that agent knows that and actually is educated and can help you in that specific thing that you need help in. So what I always suggest, again, just like the lenders, go interview a few agents. And the one caveat I want to say here is if you're going to do this and go interview agents, which I really do think you should, please make the agents aware that you're doing this. So either do it with like a phone call, or maybe you can set up like a coffee shop, kind of sit down and talk with them throughout the process. But please don't do this by like, hey, I want to see 123 Main Street. Can you schedule me a showing? And you kind of do that 4 different times for 4 different showings for 4 different agents. That is just rude and disrespectful because you're wasting the agent's time and they really think that you're a serious buyer since you're scheduling a showing. Now, some will like actually ask for things up front before scheduling that showing. Others are just eager to get out there and show a house where they don't ask for that. But their job is to follow up with you. So if you see like one house with you, guess what? That agent's going to continue to try contacting you and try to reach out because they just think that, hey, this is a buyer that went and saw a house with me, so I should keep in contact with them so I can show them more houses and sell them a property. That's literally the job of an agent. So if you're not making the agent aware of this, it's just leading them down the wrong path, and it's just, again, rude and disrespectful. So if you're gonna interview agents, please do it on a basis where you either give them a phone call and say, hey, I'm interviewing agents, I'd love to know about how you specifically go about certain things and see if we'll be a good fit. That's what happens. Agents understand this process. I think it's the best way to do it. So those are the top 8 mistakes that you should avoid when you're going into this home buying process. And the biggest takeaway you should probably get from this video, if you haven't already, is that the home buying process, you have to plan and prepare for it a lot. So that is going to be like your biggest thing, is actually getting everything lined up. So you get your real estate agent lined up, you get your lenders lined up, you have your list of your must-haves, your absolute deal breakers. You have this all ready to go. So when you go look at these houses, you are prepared and you're ready to put in an offer day one of seeing houses. That's how it should be. Because again, this is the biggest purchase you're going to make in your life, most likely. And most likely, just with the statistics of people buying houses, a lot of this is you're not going to be buying cash. So you're probably going into 30 years of debt to get into a house. So you want to make sure you plan and prepare for this well. You know you can afford it. You know you have the savings in case something goes wrong once you become a homeowner, and you're prepared for all this. That's the biggest thing, is being prepared. I can't stress that enough. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned some stuff and kind of got your head on correctly about the home buying process. And if you learned something new, I would really appreciate a like. And maybe you know someone else that's looking for a house. Please feel free to share this with them. The more people that know about actually how to buy a house, the better it is. And I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you next week.